It's September 17th, 2012, Constitution Day, and we're happy to have Kristin Canty, the producer of Farmageddon, join us tonight to talk about the unseen war on farms, family farms in America, and just to share a lot of her story about how she became an activist on this subject and about all the issues involved. And we will be covering a lot of stuff tonight, so we'll go ahead and move quickly. Just for those of you who are new and just heard about True Food Solutions, we're an online community for real food enthusiasts of all types. And we are, if you're a farmer or a gardener, a foodie, homesteader, or whatever, if you're a food activist, you like local food, we are all about providing opportunities to connect with other people. We want to provide a venue for people to share and connect with each other. Looks like my slides are automatically advancing. And we're all about growing ideas together. So without further ado, a little bit about myself. And it looks like we're on the wrong slide deck. I apologize, folks. All right, here we go. All right, my name is Jason Matthias. I'm a husband and father of 5, a lifelong gardener, an Air Force veteran, and an entrepreneur, and I'm the founder of True Food Solutions, which if you haven't already become a member, we are basically a community online of all types of people interested in different aspects of food, whether you're a gardener yourself or you're starting farming or you've been farming your whole life. If you're just a foodie or maybe a food activist, you like local food and want to learn how to branch out in your skills and your knowledge, that's a place to share what you're doing, what you've learned, and ask questions of other people. And together, hopefully, each of us can learn faster and implement locally where we're at things that people are doing elsewhere. We want to grow ideas together, and that is the purpose of the website. We're excited tonight to welcome Kristin Canty. Kristin's from Concord, Massachusetts, where she lives with her husband and 4 children. She used to be a sleep pathologist and used to be, like most Americans, eating a lot of processed food, but she'll tell us a little more detail about her journey to find real food, uncovered this war on family farms, which is the subject of her documentary, Farmageddon. So we're excited to welcome you tonight. Thank you, Kristin, for joining us. How are you tonight?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, and like I said, for your attention to this topic. And I think that your website and what you're doing here is fantastic. I saw the other webinars, and they all looked really interesting. I can't wait to look at them all.
Great. Well, go ahead with your presentation. Thanks for joining us.
So thank you. So, like you said, I used to eat a lot of processed foods. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was actually following all the government recommendations. And one of my kids, Charlie, my 3rd child, got very, very sick. He had severe asthma and allergies. Doctors diagnosed him with being allergic to the world, which meant, he was allergic to dust. I had to wrap his bed in plastic and run filters all through the house and spray dust mite spray. He was allergic to every kind of pollen, every kind of animal. There was nowhere that he could go that was safe, and he would just, sniff and wheeze all night long, screaming. And so unfortunately the medications weren't helping him, and so I was lucky to find the Western Price Foundation, where I read that many people had a lot of luck. Some people were completely cured, and others were just helped when they started drinking or feeding their children raw milk with allergies. So at the time, raw milk actually disgusted me. The stories were compelling enough that I went out and tried raw milk and gave it to my son, and in a very short time. I don't think this happens for most people. I don't know. Everybody's different, but for my son, in about 6 weeks, he was completely cured of all allergies and asthma.
Wow.
So he is 17 now. He is healthy. He's an athlete. He's 6'1". He wasn't growing at all on the medications. He was just a sickly child, and now he is a tall, healthy, athletic child.
Well, that's great. So tell us about how you went about discovering, how you could get raw milk and how you went about finding these local foods.
Yeah, it took me a while, actually. Well, first of all, it took me a while to get up the courage to try it, and then I kept researching different farmers and getting recommendations. I finally, and here in Massachusetts, we are lucky that we can buy it off the farm. The rules are different in every state. So I finally found a farmer, and I met his kids and made sure that they were healthy, and asked all of their customers, if they liked the milk and how long they'd been going there. And so finally, I did get it. I did buy milk directly from the farmer. However, it got hard because the farms, I live closer to the city, and the farms are, can be 2 hours away. And so doing this every week to get milk, although you will do anything for a sick child, it gets quite burdensome. So we formed some buying clubs. So now I've belonged to 3 buying clubs for the last 10 years. A dairy buying club where we send a refrigerated truck out to the farms in Massachusetts, and it brings back milk to Metro West Boston and some areas south of Boston weekly. I belong to a meat buying club that gets grass-fed meats from farmers around, around the Northeast here. And I belong to a vegetable CSA where we pay the farmer up front for that helps the farmer with seeds and productions when there's nothing being produced, and then for a 13-week season you get what's in season. So 3 buying clubs. And these are just ways for people to pool our resources to keep the costs of the food down. And many people, either like me who, had, got sick or had sick children, or just want to start eating locally or want to start eating directly from farmers for whatever reason, are forming these clubs around the country to make it easier for themselves to get these foods.
That's great. I'll just make a note here. One of the things that I am very passionate about, and especially in the realm of food, is finding decentralized solutions, because it seems like whether it's government or corporations or whatever, everything is becoming bigger, better, faster, cheaper, as Joel Salatin says. It's all about centralizing control, and generally that leads to less consumer choice. So it's great to hear stories like yours where people are taking matters into their own hands and working to create solutions locally that kind of just opt out of the system completely and don't necessarily allow yourself to be funneled through the mainstream distribution system that gives you limited choice, but you're creating choice by forming these cooperative type arrangements. It's really great.
Right. That's exactly what's happening around the country.
So tell us a little bit about, how did you find out about the problems that farmers were having?
Well, like I said, for 10 years I've been buying food directly from the farms, and a few years ago I met people from the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. And I was confused about why there had to be an organization called the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, and I actually found on their page a page that said what to do if you're a farmer and you think you're going to get raided. And I could never get past that I found out that these farmers were being raided, and these buying clubs were being raided that were exactly like mine, that were exactly like, the farmers were supplying foods that I was going out to get, and that we had formed clubs to get. So I got stuck on it. I couldn't sleep, and I felt that people had to know that this was going on. I started telling people that it was going on. I tried to get, I have friends in mainstream media. I have friends that work for different television stations, and I live in Boston, so I have PBS here. And first of all, many people didn't believe me that this was happening. The first response for a while was, this does not happen in this country. There must have been guns. There must have been drugs. So I had to get past that. And then some people just said, it's a good story, but you need to raise millions of dollars to make a documentary. And so luckily, finally, a man who I really wanted to make the movie, he did documentaries for CNN, asked me out to lunch, and I went out. I thought he was going to tell me that he was going to make the documentary. And he said, Kristin, if you want this documentary made, you're going to have to make it yourself. So the next week I formed Kristin Marie Productions, and I set out around the country to interview the farmers and hopefully tell the story of these people that had been raided and the terror that they had gone through. And of course the goal of it was to try to, if people ever watched it, was to try to create outrage, to make people aware, because either either people do want to eat directly from the farmer and they're upset that this is happening around the country to their food supply, or in some cases people have told me, I don't care what I put into my mouth, and I don't I would never spend so much time on my food. However, it angers me that my tax dollars are going to this. So either reaction is fine with me. I'm really trying to stop these raids and trying to protect our farmers and our buying clubs from this happening.
Okay. Well, tell us a little more about what what's all the legal trouble coming from? I mean, what's the full story?
The full story is, the reason why these raids are happening, the government will say that, it's all in the name of food safety. However, I have to argue that these people, the farmers in my movie, and as far as I know, every farmer that have gone through these raids and food buying clubs that have gone through these raids, nobody has ever gotten sick from any of these places, and nobody has ever even complained. So it's quite the opposite. We're actually, the government's actually raiding these farms and co-ops that have happy, healthy customers that were, very, very upset when their buying club was shut down. And so, very few. It was hard for me to get government agents to speak on camera. However, when they did, and you can see in the film that just say, we need to keep food safe. And unfortunately, it seems that the safest food is being cracked down on the hardest, whereas the industrialized food just doesn't have as many rules.
Right. So your film is fantastic, by the way. It's one of these things where, I knew a lot of this stuff was happening, but just hearing the stories from the farmers' mouths and the people running the buying clubs and stuff, it's so infuriating. Why? So here's the question: so why buying clubs and private co-ops instead of just the farmers?
Well, it's both. There's.
I understand that, but I'm saying, why is the government going after these private buying clubs? And most of them are private buying clubs. It's not open to the public, so the commerce laws that they're actually trying to enforce don't really apply. So why are they going after the private co-ops?
They, the reason is the same. They just say that it's because of food safety. There's a couple examples I know in the slides coming up. I can skip ahead. There's Jackie Stowers, who runs Manna Storehouse in LaGrange, Ohio, and she found 40 farms around her that had no idea how to get their product to market, and because the big supermarkets weren't taking the products from the smaller farmers. So she had this fantastic idea to go around, and one week she would go around and get food from these farmers and bring it back to her house to a central location, and her neighbors would pick it up. And the next week her neighbor would go out and get food from these farms and bring it back, and it grew, and it became this private club, and you had to be a member to get this food, and it was just a direct sale directly from the farmer to the consumer. And they signed a contract where the government just doesn't need to get involved. They were basically just sharing food with their neighbors. And the Ohio Department of Agriculture caught wind of this, and their response was to enter their house with 9 armed agents, keep their 6 kids in a room for 6 hours while there was a bunch of kids in the house, because she had her kids in there and her daughter-in-law was living there because her son was in Iraq. So she was living there with their 4 kids. They were homeschooling. These kids are held upstairs with 2 adults for hours while these government agents ransacked their house, took their computers, took their cell phones, wouldn't let them answer their cell phone when their son called from Iraq, took their food for their personal use as well as the food from their buying club. And on the warrant, this is one of the situations where people just find it hard to believe because it was a private club. On the warrant, it said that they might be operating a retail establishment without a license, which is a third-degree misdemeanor. And so, and then they were never charged. So, the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund and civil rights organization in Ohio sued the Department of Agriculture in Ohio for civil rights infringement, and unfortunately they lost. And this is happening a lot too, that we're trying to take legal action and the judges have been siding with the government. So hopefully we can turn the tide.
Yeah, so apparently in Ohio and other states, private contract law is not held in very high esteem, and the government can just redefine what private contracts are and apply public retail establishment laws and regulations to them. And even when they don't apply, it doesn't really matter because the judiciary won't follow up to ensure that the executive agencies are not infringing upon people's rights.
Right. I mean, that's the whole argument in a nutshell, that we're buying directly, it's a private club, the government doesn't need to be involved, and they're taking responsibility for their own food. They're going, checking to make sure that the farmers are growing the food the way they want to grow, chemical-free, that the animals are grass-fed, the animals are outside, they're treated well, and because they don't trust the government to make sure that this is happening for them, and they're being punished for it.
Wow. Well, what are some of the other stories of farmers that you learned about in this investigation?
This was a case out of Warren, Vermont, that's in the movie. Linda and Larry Fillets, they started Three Shepherds Cheese, and they imported sheep from England and milked the sheep with their 3 kids, and they won awards for their cheese making from these sheep. They were on Martha Stewart, they were on the Today Show, they won awards in Bon Appetit magazine, and they weren't making a killing, they weren't making $1 million, but they were making ends meet, and they were happy, and they had a successful business in Vermont, making this cheese. And the government she had worked with the government for 5 years to make sure that the sheep were scrapie free, and after the 5 years, she was going to help other people form these cheese-making farms, and with these healthy sheep, she was going to breed the healthy sheep and help other people do it. So unfortunately, after the 5 years, the government stepped in and said that the sheep, because they were imported from England, might have mad cow disease. And they were doing this. They actually, the government at the time had just had killed any sheep, any animal that had come over from England. But Linda and Larry had studied mad cow disease, so they fought it because they knew that sheep weren't getting mad cow disease, and they didn't get mad cow disease. And because they fought it, they ended up in court. They ended up getting a court case, a federal court case with a judge that was known to side against the government. And so the USDA, instead of waiting for this court case to see what would happen, they went in 15 days before the court case at 5 o'clock in the morning with 40 armed agents, took the sheep, took them out to Iowa, and killed them for a disease that didn't exist. And all the tests for mad cow continued to come back negative. The sheep were perfectly healthy. And the USDA continued to make them take their barn apart, their cheese-making facilities apart. It's just a horrible story. And they spent $1 million spying on the Fillets, taking notes on what they were doing. This is all in the movie. But, this is just one of those horrific cases of the government going out of bounds and, making a policy that made no sense in the name of public safety and destroying a family, destroying their business, and just destroying lives.
I think most importantly, it destroyed a new line of agricultural product in that bringing those English sheep over and creating this unique cheese product, and the fact that they were going to be breeding them and getting other farms to start them. I'm guessing that had something to do with why the USDA took the actions it did.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, it was kind of a trade war at the time when, they thought, mad cow disease was in England, and here our meat packing, our McDonald's, Wendy's, they were afraid that if Europe ever caught wind that we had mad cow disease over here, the markets would crash. Europe had already, they had been refusing to take our meat, and they had been refusing to take a lot of our pharmaceuticals because we don't test for mad cow disease over here, and so that angered the USDA, and it seemed that they took it out on the sheep. So.
Did they file a civil suit afterwards, or was there any disciplinary action that was done against the agents or parts of the USDA that were involved?
Unfortunately, no. Again, the government. They didn't get the judge that sided with the government for the civil case, unfortunately, and they lost their case.
It's a very sad story.
In the name of safety.
Yeah, I think it's one of the worst parts of the movie. It's so infuriating to see something so clearly, like you said, out of bounds, just completely lawless. It's maddening when when people, agents of the government that are sworn to uphold the law, end up making the law themselves and enforcing it indiscriminately and ruining people's lives and doing it, ostensibly on behalf of big agribusiness industry who, have agendas to accomplish and snuffing out a new growing line of food products that they can't produce. Seems like it's a lot easier to compete when you just put your competition out of business through government henchmen than actually competing with them. So. Well, you talked about a couple stories about the farmers. What about the food co-ops? Tell us about the Rawesome Raid.
Yeah, the Rawesome people. That is a very popular food co-op in a private buying club in Venice, California, and where you could get grass-fed meats and you could get homemade things, which is so great when you're trying to eat this way. You could get homemade marinated meats and homemade fermented salsas and kombucha and raw dairy, all the raw dairy products, raw cheese from local farmers, and it was just a wonderful place. And that club was raided 3 times by as many as 40 agencies, like many. Between the state and the federal agencies, it was a number of armed guards. There's pictures there of the police pointing guns at watermelons, and so so we were lucky. That raid was so ridiculous that it did get a little more press. Luckily, I know Colbert covered it and John Stossel covered it, which was nice, but it still hasn't sparked the outrage that it should have because unfortunately. That the Rawesome Club has been shut down, and all the third time they came, locked the doors, so now it's all been destroyed. All of the food, all perfectly healthy, safe food was destroyed. Thousands and thousands of dollars of food was confiscated and thrown away when there is a homeless shelter right around the corner. I find that just so sinful. And so now James Stewart, who's the owner of Rawesome Foods, and Sharon Palmer, who's one of the farmers who used to supply some products to them, they're both being prosecuted by the FDA. They're being prosecuted with a felony. The felony is conspiracy, and the conspiracy is to sell raw milk. And raw milk it's legal to sell in California. And even if you're talking about bringing it over state lines, that's still only a misdemeanor. So So this is just confusing and scary and sad, and I'm hoping, I think the court, I haven't spoken to them in a few weeks, but I think the court case is coming up, and we're all hoping that the judge does the right thing and you know, figures out that it's okay for them to sell raw milk in California and to share foods under a private buying club.
So let me get this right. Raw milk is legal to buy in California, correct?
And to sell, yes. It's legal to buy everywhere. It's legal
right,
to sell
but it's legal for retailers to sell it, but they're charging them with conspiracy to sell raw milk, even though it's legal.
Right.
How does this pass muster?
It just doesn't, and so
is it because they're saying they're not a retail outlet because they're a private club, but it's only legal for retail outlets? Is that the reasoning on behalf of the government?
To tell you the truth, there doesn't seem to be any reasoning on behalf of the government. Those are the facts right there, and so I mean I've been told that it's so ridiculous that it won't hold up in court, but I'm not so sure.
Know.
Yeah, I'm not so sure with the way things have been going lately. And there's a chat. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I keep looking at the word conspiracy on the screen, and from all the evidence, and I've read a lot about this case. From all the evidence I've seen, it seems that the conspiracy is definitely not on the part of James Stewart and Sharon Palmer.
No, and Victoria Block, who's a Western Price chapter leader like myself, who was just if you go on the internet, if you go to the Western Price website, westernprice.org, and you click on chapter leader, the chapter leaders are there to help you find local farms, to find raw milk in your state or town if you need it, if you want it, find where the grass-fed meats are and unsprayed vegetables, and that's what Victoria did. And this is another case where the FDA spent $1 million infiltrating their buying club to meet them and become friends with them, so they could find out where to get the raw milk in California, where you can get raw milk anywhere. But anyway, it's just another ridiculous case, and I'm really hoping that they don't get prosecuted, or they don't get convicted. They're being prosecuted. So
right. Well, we'll keep tabs on that case, and all those who feel so led, I encourage you to pray for those involved. They would that justice would be done, and that the government's case, which looks a lot more like conspiracy than what they're accusing them of, would be rejected. So this is all about food safety, apparently, right? But as you said,
no one has ever gotten sick from any of the buying clubs that have been shut down, and like I said, there's never even been a complaint. So the opposite. Everyone from any of these clubs will just tell you how much they love their food, how much they love their buying clubs. I mean, they have to pay to belong to these buying clubs, and it's not easy to belong to a buying club either. It's work. You have to, in many cases, you actually have to volunteer and do work in this club. And many of these people, like I've said, have actually gone out and met the farmers and to see like how they're growing their food and how they're treating their animals and what they're feeding them. And so it's not easy. It's way easier to go to a supermarket. These people are happy. They like their buying clubs, and they feel like they're getting healthier by eating these foods. So yeah, the food safety does. As far as I'm concerned, it's the safest food that they're cracking down on.
Right. The food safety is really just a thin veneer to cover essentially an unchecked, oppressive regulatory agency or agencies, because it's not just federal; it's state. A lot of the state agencies often do this without federal involvement. They take it upon themselves to persecute and prosecute farmers, right?
Yeah,
so, what about talk to us about the FDA's kind of policy? We talked about obviously like the Rawesome food. The FDA was involved with that. We see the impact of it, but kind of at a higher level, like what are they trying to accomplish?
Well, there's a document right now called, you can look this up on the internet. It's called Healthy People 2020, and so what they're doing right now is they're having monthly meetings with your state health departments, and they have a huge list of objectives. I don't know if any of their objectives will make you healthier, but a lot of it is a lot of it is to cut down on germs. It's very, and so some of that might be good, but they consider they consider food to be full of germs. Our grass-fed foods and our raw milk to be full of germs. So their biggest, so one of their objectives is obviously to cut down on the number of states that allow for the sale of raw milk. So so they don't want any states that don't already sell raw milk to start selling it, and in the states that do, they're trying to make it harder. So for instance, in Massachusetts, like I told you, we can buy milk off the farm, which is great, but we carpool. We have these buying clubs. We send refrigerated trucks out to our farms, and the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, because they were pressured by our Department of Health, told us recently that it's illegal for us to carpool to get our milk. That was their response to their Healthy People 2020. They need to keep us safer. And so we did protest. We went out, we got a cow, we milked it on the Boston Common, and hundreds of people went in and said, we need to carpool, we need our milk, we can't drive 2 hours every week, and that's not good for the environment, or some people are handicapped, they can't do it, and they're insisting that we each have to take our own car out to the farms. They sent a grandmother a cease and desist order for picking up milk for her grandchildren, and that's how ridiculous it was. So we protested, and we made our voices heard, and for the time being, the Secretary of Agriculture said that he maintained that carpooling is against the law. It's not written anywhere. They just decided, and that for now they're going to be looking the other way. So so basically, the FDA also doesn't. Yeah, they in response to one of the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund's lawsuit that stated that they should be allowed to bring raw milk over state lines because we're allowed to consume the foods of our choice. The FDA wrote in the rebuttal that there is no absolute right to consume or feed children any particular food, and that there is no generalized right to bodily and physical health. So I don't know about you, but it really frightens me that an agency that's supposedly in charge of our health, thinks it's in charge of our health, and wants to be in charge of our everything that we eat, makes these statements that there's no right to consume or feed children any particular food, and there's no generalized right to bodily and physical health. That seriously concerns me.
As I think it should concern anybody who cares about health and freedom. I mean, those two statements taken together basically say you have no right to choose what you put in your body, and you have no right to be healthy. I mean,
exactly.
it's tyranny defined as it applies to your body and your health. I don't think it gets any clearer than that. So we have a clear vision of what the FDA thinks about this issue, right? It's like they are the ones that decide for you what's good for you, what you will be able to eat, and what you can choose. So you will have no freedom of choice other than the freedom that they give you. So what are some of the other recent cases and things that have been going on that aren't necessarily in the film?
Well, unfortunately, Alvin Schlangen is on trial today. His trial started today. At the end of the day, the jury had been selected. They did offer him he refused an offer to have three of the one charge was dropped. He had 4 charges against him. One charge was dropped immediately, a charge that he was labeling food. There was 2 other charges that they said they wanted to drop, but they wanted him to plead guilty to one of the charges. And I couldn't get a good update of what the charge was that they wanted him to plead guilty to. I asked all day, and I was getting live updates from the courthouse, but they couldn't get that information. But Alvin refused it anyway, so he's going to trial, and they picked the jury today, and we're hoping that the jury finds him innocent.
Mm.
So, and he's being prosecuted for the same thing. He's a farmer, and he has some foods himself. He's a farmer that delivers into the Twin Cities, into Minneapolis and St. Paul, and he also delivered milk and to various homes. So certain people would offer to have their refrigerators. And people could just go to the refrigerator and pick it up. And some of the moms were threatened with prosecution too in this buying club if they didn't stop supplying their refrigerator for these buying clubs. But anyway, so we're hoping that the jury does the right thing.
And what is the law in Minnesota regarding raw milk?
Yeah, it's the same as Massachusetts. You can buy it off the farm.
Okay, so they're trying to attack it from the distribution perspective of he's delivering it, and it's being done through intermediaries, and they're trying to basically use that as the leverage to shut it down. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
They said, I mean, basically their state won't say a lot when these cases are being prosecuted. They won't say a lot, but their statements were that everybody needs a food handler's license, a food retail license to distribute food. And you know what? If they could get a retail license, if they could get a license for doing this, for delivering milk, and do it with the state approval, I'm sure they would. The thing is that we can't get licenses to buy directly from our farmer, or to they tell us it's illegal to carpool. They're not going to give us a license to carpool. So some people might refuse the licenses. I think that there's other businesses like Alvin's or the lady who drives the refrigerator truck in my state. I'm sure they'd love to have a license, but it's not offered. So that's
right.
the problem.
And of course, licensing is the state's way to control what you do and to impose costs in a way that helps people that help them. In other words, a lot of licensing and regulation in many industries. This is not just with food, but I think if you've done any study on this issue, and I know you have, Kristin, the government regulators often create huge hurdles, whether they're compliance or in a lot of compliance things drive costs for compliance that are not scalable. Joel Salatin talks about this a lot. A lot of food regulation is not scalable, so it applies fine to the huge agribusiness industrial food producer, but it doesn't scale down to a small producer, and basically the costs that are required for the small producer basically makes it cost prohibitive. They can't comply, or put them out of business, or the fines and those kind of things can put them out of business. So it happens in other industries as well. We see where the government is used as an agent essentially of the highest bidder to put competition out of business. So I think that really, as we're seeing, whether it's on the farmer side or on the consumer side, which also ties into the buying clubs, the area, since the retail regulations apply to essentially public sale, freedom of contract is the basis for these buying clubs and for the farm to consumer direct relationship. And it sounds like they're trying to whittle away at that by first going after the distribution aspect of it by saying, hey, you can't carpool. You all each have to go individually to the farmer, which drives up the cost for the consumer, which makes it less popular, especially for that method of food distribution to become more widespread, because a lot of people aren't going to go drive it to the farm every time, right? They don't care about it. Their food is enough, like you were talking about earlier. What's your sense of, like you said, a lot of these cases are decided in favor of the government. Do you think, it seems to me that private contract is the basis for how we win this fight. And what's your sense from the court perspective, as well as from just enough people, enough mass of the people saying to heck with the regulators that are trying to tell me what to do with my body and my family, and I'm going to go get this stuff. What's your sense of where the balance is? Is it tipping in our favor, or do you think that the overzealous government agents are winning that battle?
You know what? I can't tell. Right now, there's a lot of people fighting. There's a few successful stories. There's a food buying club in Kentucky that got their they got their milk tagged and confiscated by the government. It was a buying club, same thing, and the entire buying club took their milk, marched down to City Hall, and said, "You are not taking our milk. It belongs to me." And they backed off. And our Raw Milk Freedom Riders, we formed to, they've been doing some civil disobedience in different cities, and they took milk from Pennsylvania into Maryland, and distributed it in front of the FDA headquarters in Silver Spring, and said, you cannot criminalize mothers for milk. That was their message. And that day, the FDA did put out a statement that said, it was nice for the FDA to even respond, because usually they don't. But they wrote, at this time we have no desire to prosecute individuals for bringing milk over state lines for their own consumption. So at least that was a slightly positive statement, even though they said at this time. However, like you said, they're doing it by they don't care about the individual consumption, because they're going after the people that are running the buying clubs, and they're going after the actual farmers. So when there's no farmers left, there's not going to be any individuals consuming. But the hope is that if each and every one of you goes out and find your local farmer, find your get as much food as possible from your local farmer. The numbers will help, and if you find your farmer is running into regulations that could drive them out of business or having any legal problem, let your voice be heard, be strong, write to the FDA, get involved, and like I said, put as many food dollars as you can with the small guy, with the small organic farmer.
Mm-hmm. I think I probably jumped ahead a little bit here. So Wisconsin's known for milk and cheese, right? But tell us about Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. So sadly, that's another sad case. So there's a number of states that raw milk is illegal to sell, Wisconsin being one of them. And so the way people get around this is they form these herd shares, where they buy a herd, or a cow share, where they buy one cow. Just a few families will go in on a cow, and one person will take care of the cow, and they'll drink milk from that cow. And so a judge in Wisconsin did not like this, so he ruled recently that it is actually illegal to drink milk from your own cow. And that's one of the worst. So not one. So that was
unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Pretty shocking. That was up there with you have no right to bodily health. So. Right,
and you talked a little earlier about Massachusetts and the carpooling issue. So what's next? You kind of started talking about this already. What can people do?
Yep, sorry, I'm going out of order there.
Fine.
I'm just talking. So my website is farmageddonmovie.com, and there's a bunch of different ways you can watch it now, thankfully. It's on hard copy on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can order the hard copy on Netflix with your Netflix account. And I think it's also streaming now on Netflix. I know it's on iTunes, Hulu, Vudu, and I think it's just a couple of dollars. So watch it, share it, let people know that this is actually happening. My Facebook page is Farmageddon the Movie, and my Twitter is at Kristin Canty, and I try to keep people updated on, today I tried to update people all day on what was happening with Alvin, the farmer in Minnesota that's being prosecuted. There are, on my website, farmageddonmovie.com, there's a bar called Resources, and there's an Eat Well guide there where you can plug in where you are, and it will give you some examples of some farmers markets and sustainable restaurants, organic restaurants, and perhaps in some grocery stores around you that have sustainable food. And if, like I said before, if you go to the Western Price website, and there's a link to that website on my website also. There's you can go to chapter leaders, and the chapter leaders should be able to help you find organic local foods. And there's also a link called realmilk.com that can help you find farms that have real milk. And just in states that you can't buy it, they might have an example of a buying club, or they can also maybe help you find some farms that at least have some raw cheese for you. And then there's also a new website coming up called Farm Match that you can actually, it was launched last week, and you can actually get on it, and it will, they're hoping to populate it, so it's going to be slow, but you can get on it and say and make a profile and put in all the foods that you want to find, and whether it be dairy or meats or vegetables, and then the farms should pop up that have this and that are supplying what you need around you. And then there's also a bunch of organizations that you can give money to, like the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance, the NOFA Mass chapters, that are working on these issues and trying to support your small farmers.
Great. And one I threw in there on the previous slide, I'll go back here, is localharvest.org is the biggest and probably the most extensive list. It's essentially a directory site of farms. However, I advise everyone make sure you investigate the farm and their production methods to determine what kind of quality. If you can find farms locally through like Weston A. Price and other organizations who are kind of a filter, I recommend that first, but sometimes there may be certain things you can't find, and you might be able to uncover them through Local Harvest and other similar websites. And then, it's also important to get involved in networking just locally, with representatives that are part of these organizations. So, I highly recommend that everybody becomes a member of the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. They have both memberships for farmers as well as consumers. They also have memberships for buying clubs and cooperatives or nonprofit organizations. They're kind of like affiliate members. And basically what that does is it helps provide resources to defend these farmers in court, which is really where the battle is being fought, because that's where the injustices being meted out by the executive agencies against these farmers and buying clubs have any choice of being corrected, essentially. So I think it's a two-front battle in my mind. There's one which is being fought in the marketplace, the other is being fought in the court. So being involved in the marketplace is great, but if you can support the battle in court through Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, that's great as well. And then obviously, like Kristin said, watch the film. It really, I've studied a lot of these issues for a long time, but seeing and hearing from the farmers in their own words what happens really is infuriating, and it's good to the extent that it motivates you to want to do something about it. And the film has gotten very good reviews from across the spectrum. LA Times has a particularly good one here, I thought, that described it well. You can get the film in the True Food Solutions store. I'd recommend that wherever you get the film, that you leave a review on Amazon, because that helps other people find it by rating it highly and then leaving a review there as well. And then share it with your friends. Have a movie night and share it, and tell other people about it. So we'll get to questions here in just a minute. I do want to also mention that I'd like to make a special offer to everybody on the webinar that you can get 20% off your whole order at the True Food Solutions store, and any orders over $75 can receive the Farmageddon movie for free if you use the code Farmageddon at checkout. So I'll have a follow-up email to everybody that attended tonight or registered for the webinar, and we'll have the details of that repeated in the email, so you can get it that way too. Really appreciate Kristin coming on tonight and sharing with us. Kristin, do you have any final words or thoughts you want to share with us before we go into the question section of the program?
No, I just really appreciate, I find this to be a huge injustice, and I just really appreciate people paying attention and listening.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Okay, everybody, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box, and we'll take them as they come. I'll have a lead-off question here. From your experience, since you've been involved in buying clubs and these kind of things, what is the best way, do you think, two things. One, obviously, if somebody's already doing one in your area, it's great just to get involved with something that's going on already. So one would be, what's the best way to find a buying club, in addition to maybe what you already mentioned, Weston A. Price. And second, if there isn't a buying club, like, what's the best way to figure out how to start one and do it yourself? Because, you know, if it's not there, we shouldn't throw our hands in the air and say, oh, well, I guess I can't do it, right? Take action like you did and do something about it. So
there are so many people that, I mean, if any of you listening want to start a buying club, I can connect you with the people that have started the buying clubs. So you can email me. My email is kristincanty@aol.com, and I can connect you with the different buying club, you know, a number of people that have started a few buying clubs and that have been very successful. So, and again, if you want to find one in your area, there are a lot of them. So I'm sure if you're having trouble, you just connect with me. I'm a chapter leader, and I can connect you with your area chapter leader. And if there isn't one, I can connect you with someone in another area and help you find the resources to start your buying club.
Great, great. And actually, there is I think it's on the Farm to Consumer website. There's actually a Buyers Club handbook that's really good. I don't currently have any. I got some a while ago, but I'm out. But if you're you can go on the Farm to Consumer website and get that as well. I'd recommend that. Also, just a quick note, all the resources that Kristin mentioned in the webinar and others that come up, she references here in the Q&A and whatnot, I'm going to be listing all of those on the webinar page where the recording will be posted after we're done. So tomorrow or the following day, whenever I get all of the video recording edited and up, we'll have the resources listed there as well. So if you have, a lot of these questions are like, what was the name of you know, that website or whatever, all that will be listed, so don't feel like you have to get it all tonight. If there is something that you heard in the presentation you want to know more about, by all means ask that, and we'll make sure that we provide any of that information on the page as a resource page as well. One question we had was about if you may not remember offhand, but what's the name of the court case where the FDA basically said you don't have a right to what you eat or your own health?
Yeah, that's listed on the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund website, and it is the case where the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund is prosecuting or is suing the FDA for not allowing raw milk to cross state lines, and so for the rights to cross state lines with raw milk, and so that was the rebuttal. But eventually the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund actually lost the case, so against the FDA.
Okay.
And all the information from that case is on the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund website. One thing I do need to say too is if you are planning to start a buying club, it's very inexpensive to join the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, and it guarantees you, like you said, you know, they'll help you with the legal issues of starting the club, and if you ever get into trouble, you have 24-hour hotline and free legal help if you have to end up having to go to court.
Right. So the message here, people, is educate yourself, take action, but don't do it alone.
Right.
Get help. Like, you know, figure out from other people. If you're starting a buying club, for instance, in your area, and because nobody's doing one there, you know, figure out how to do it from people who have done it before. Use best practices. Get that buying club handbook I mentioned, and join the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, because they're going to not only help you set it up properly, but if you have any problems, they'll be there to help you. You know, deal with those, especially legal challenges and that kind of thing. So, you know, take action, but do it smartly and work together. So, all right, let's see here. What other questions do we have? How about there's actually a very active discussions going on in the chat, which is great, but it makes it harder for me to pick out the questions. So, talk about the court case. There's a lot of discussion mentioning, you know, obviously people. There's a sidebar here talking about GMOs and whatnot. I'll just throw this out there because I think it's important. Jeffrey Smith, who's one of the leading experts on the dangers of GMOs, has a film that came out not too long ago called Genetic Roulette, and that's actually free to watch online over the next week. We'll make sure we post that on the resource page as well, just since it's being chatted about, in case anybody wants to see that. Let's see here. What else do we have? Actually, a lot of discussions, but not many questions. Anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? People are throwing out all kinds of great book titles. And
oh, great.
And this is great. You know, the reason that I started True Food Solutions and the reason I'm doing this webinar series is for this purpose. I mean, we love having people that have done important things like your film, Kristin. But really, what I want to do is get people to join together and to work together. And so it's great for me to see all of this sidebar chat in the webinar room, people talking about you know, things they found and their ideas and all that. So you know, if you haven't already become a member of True Food Solutions, please do so. We've got discussion groups. There's a Q&A section on the site where you can ask questions and other members can answer. The Q&A section is pretty cool because it actually allows the members to vote the best questions at the top, and that becomes a resource base that other people can use to find good answers. All right, here's a good question from Mike Brabo in Missouri, one of my good farmer friends out there. How do you recommend educating consumers as to the real costs of pasture-based meat and organically grown vegetables and fruit versus conventionally raised?
Hello? Are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, all right. I just had a beep. Well, Joel Salatin has a very good comment about that in the movie, where he says, you know, most of the cost of this has nothing to do with production, but about the regulations that that impede the farmer getting it to the consumer. And you know, so there's a little bit of that, but as far as educating the consumer, you know, we talk about the numerous health benefits of eating grass-fed meats compared to grain-fed, corn-fed meats, and we talk about how the animals are treated. And there's lots of good books that I've handed out about it. Well, first of all, Nourishing Traditions is my favorite cookbook and has a lot of information about it in there. Jessica Prentice also has a wonderful book called Full Moon Feast, where she discusses it. And I know that the Tender Grass-Fed cookbook has a lot about the grass-fed meats, and the U.S. Grass-Fed Wellness website has a lot of information about the health benefits of meat, and he's always publishing studies of how much better grass-fed meats are for you. So, you know, I mean, it's all about choice, and people make their choices about what they want to spend money on. But in the end, sometimes it takes people getting sick before they'll start spending more money on food. You know, I live in a pretty wealthy town, and I've had so many people say to me, I cannot afford, I can't afford to eat grass-fed meats. I can't afford to eat organic foods that are walking around in designer clothes. And so, you know, some of it's choice. And let me tell you, none of the people in my movie are rich by any means. All of them are making ends meet. You know, they're bartering. They're like I said, they're working and they're volunteering their time. They're working in their co-ops, and because they've made a choice to eat healthy. It's a priority to them. So whether we're going to be able to convince a majority of the people that if they eat better, if they don't eat better, they're going to be spending their dollars on their health bills and on their hospital bills. In the end, it really, all we can do is do our best to educate them and send them to the Weston Price Organization. Is also a great website for information for educating people on the health benefits. In the end, it's all about choice.
Right. I just put up a slide here. There's actually two slides that were from our webinar 2 weeks ago. from Renee DeGroot, who wrote a book called Health for Godly Generations, and it's all about traditional nutrition and a lot of things you're just talking about. And she's very like-minded in nourishing traditions she recommends and others like that. These are 2 slides from her presentation, and this quote by Joel Salatin, I think, there's 2 quotes here, and they both get to this point. And he says we can't even begin talking about local food until we get enough culinary expertise to know what to do with the things when they're available. Nobody even knows how to cook anymore. And then the follow-up to that is, our nation can only be as physically healthy as the vibrancy of its household kitchens. The less emphasis we put on that critical component of the food system, the less we obviously care about everything else in the food system, the farm, the soil, and ultimately our own health. The notion that we can extricate ourselves from our kitchens and preserve food integrity is foolish. At 4 o'clock on Monday, more than half all Americans have no clue what's for dinner. I'm not suggesting we obsess over our food, but it's a long way between where we are and obsession. And those quotes come from his most recent book called Folks, This Ain't Normal. I'd highly recommend that if you haven't already gotten it, that you pick up a copy. It covers a lot of things he's covered in other books, but this is actually, interestingly enough, his first book that was published by a publisher. His other books were self-published, and so this one is more mainstream and more inclusive of a lot of the topics he covers in other books. And especially if you're looking for a lot of great ideas encapsulated into digestible format, especially something you can share with people that you're trying to educate about these issues, I'd highly recommend using this book to do that. And Joel Salatin, if you've ever heard him, he's a very entertaining guy, but this book kind of puts a lot of the stuff that he talks about all in one package. So I'd recommend that you look for that resource if you haven't already gotten it. All right, let me see what other questions we have. There's so much discussion going on. Again, I'm having trouble finding the questions here. There's a discussion going on about about CSAs and versus farmers markets. Why don't you give us your take on that? Obviously you've done a CSA. Have you been involved with farmers markets, or what are the pros and cons and things to look out for people that may not already be pros at that?
Yeah, I have my CSA. We in our town we have a lot of farm stands and CSAs. We have a farmers market only like twice a year, but we are so lucky because we have so many farms. Mm-hmm. Again, it's all about choice. I have a farm that I've been going to for years. I pay up front, and half of my share goes to the food banks. So that's just something that I really like to do to help the food banks get organic vegetables. I love that. And it also brings kids out from the city, and it employs them, and it's kind of like a retreat. It's almost, I don't want to say it's like a religious retreat, but they get that experience. They get the connection to their food, and I've seen some life changes in these kids, so I like to be a part of that. Other people I know, they don't like a CSA because they either get too much or too little. And every week, and so that you just get what's there when you join a CSA, and they'd prefer to go to the farmers market and pick and choose what they want every week, and see the different farmers there. So I think it's all about. I don't think one's better than the other. I think that they're all good ideas and ways for us to put our dollars locally and help different causes, and I just think it's all about choice. Many times I do need to go visit a different farmer's market because some weeks I just don't get enough vegetables to feed my family for the week from the CSA. And also I never get enough greens to last the whole week.
So let me ask you this then. We're not necessarily the focus of tonight's presentation, but are you gardening, and how do you work that into how you source your food for your family?
I am gardening, but I've been traveling, and this happens to a lot of home gardeners. that I've been traveling so much that it just hasn't been that great of a garden for me, and my tomatoes, most of my tomatoes got blight. So so I'm lucky enough to be able to go out. Like tonight, I was able to go out and get some cherry tomatoes that were saved, and some plum tomatoes, and some like the last of my peppers. But for the most part, I need to supplement my garden, and I have lots of herbs. But for the most part, I need to supplement my garden with the farms around, and I'm glad that there's experts around me that are doing a better job. So,
yeah,
for those who are backyard gardening, yeah, they don't even need, some of them don't even need to go to the farmers markets. Or
yeah, well, I've been gardening my whole life, and I've been building up, especially in the last several years as my family's been growing, especially as my kids. We homeschool, and one of the things that is important to me in training my children is teaching them how to work. And one of the work that I do is mostly kind of online business type stuff. So they can't really help me with that right now. My oldest is 8, but my 8-year-old, since she was 2, has been helping me in the garden. So they've been all along, learning about botany and biology and how to work in the garden. So that's great. So it's kind of an integrated thing that we do. And then we also produce a lot of our own food, but we can't produce all of our own food yet, especially just because of the labor demands. And if you've got a busy schedule like you, it's hard to do that. So I think that there's for most people, it's going to be some kind of a blend. So I'd encourage you to, anybody that's out there, if you can grow something, please do. And usually there's nobody who can't grow anything, because even if you only have a window, you can grow stuff, right? It's a little more challenging. So grow what you can, and the supplements you can't grow from local sources, like Kristin's been recommending, and use the resources that she's been mentioning, and ones that we're going to list here. And there's other resources listed on the website as well, to find those. And I think that the biggest thing is educating yourself, doing lots of research and reading, relying on others who have been there, done that, and then also networking locally. And for instance, on the farmers market topic, we live in Salem, Virginia, which is just west of Roanoke, right? It's connected to Roanoke. Essentially, it's a suburb of Roanoke. But the Salem Farmers Market is one of the biggest, most popular farmers markets in actually the whole part of Western Virginia. There's vendors, farm vendors that come from 2-3 hours away to the south to come up to this farmers market, and it's actually it goes all week. There's usually some vendor there from Tuesday through Saturday, which is fantastic. But usually Friday, Saturdays are the big days. But if you want organic, if you're buying produce, sometimes it's hard to find even at a farmer's market, because a lot of times just because it's local doesn't mean it's organic. So that's why I said investigate production methods, get to know your farmer. If you can, go visit the farm, even if you're buying from that farmer at a farmer's market on a regular basis, because that might be, if it's a supplementing kind of thing, you need to supplement here or there, kind of like my family does. You don't necessarily need to be part of a CSA, but getting into the farmer locally, then you have a kind of a trusted source. And that's actually one thing I was going to ask earlier and I didn't get to. I'll ask you now before we wrap up with the Q&A. My perspective is that there's really, food safety is ultimately about trust. And most people today, unfortunately, have come to rely on the government, to trust the government to ensure food safety. But we're talking about a completely different method of ensuring food safety, and that's through direct trust. So can you talk to that issue a little bit, Kristin, about how trust is established in a local food system and why that's not only important but much better than the modern industrial food system model of regulations and all these big, huge conglomerates of companies and big, huge government agencies and all that stuff? Why is trust important?
I mean, it is. Let me tell you that every single one of the farms that I filmed, every single one of them said, you do not have to ever let us know when you are coming. You come any day, because we will always be here, and you can working our farm, and you can always film us. Now, you don't hear that. Like the big organizations, the big food companies, it's locked. It is, there's fences around it, and there are cameras around, and there's keep out signs. and you can't get in there. And so I have a rule for myself now that if if you can't get in to see how that food is being produced, you shouldn't be eating it. You should be able to see it, and it should be transparent. And so, so trust. You can't. It's hard to just blindly trust someone. You can't regulate integrity, but we can go meet our farmers. We can, and like I've said before, see the animals, see how the farmer's growing things. Meet their other customers, and in the end, anybody can lie to you, but you can't regulate that. And all you can do is also, all you can do is be vigilant for yourself in your own food. And for the most part, these farmers that are producing these kinds of foods, they have so much to lose, so much more to lose. If they were producing poorly, and so in my experience, they work the hardest to make sure that their food is the safest. And so that's what I have to say on the subject. Is that if you can go on the farm, if you can meet these farmers and see their farms, that's the safest food that you can probably eat.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that's the we need to go back to the old ways. That was the norm even 40, 50 years ago. But after not just urbanization but suburbanization and this modern transportation system enabling just-in-time distribution for food, that's just kind of fallen out. It's great to see the resurgence of farmers markets, people getting back into knowing their farmers, doing CSAs and all that kind of stuff. But it does need support. So it's great to see the work that you're doing in this opportunity you've been given to create this film and promote it, to raise awareness about the issues and get people to second guess a lot of the assumptions that they may have about food and how safe things really are. So before we wrap up, why don't you just tell us just a little bit about, you said you've been traveling a lot. What kind of opportunities have you had to showcase the film, talk about it, interviews, all that kind of thing? What does that look like?
Yeah, I've been doing like 1 to 6 interviews a day on radio, so I'm hoping that that's helping and getting exposure. And people are still screening the film, having screenings at different colleges. I'm going up to Champlain, Vermont next month. I just recently went to New Hampshire again, and I'm going to Mother Earth News this weekend, which is in Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. Mother Earth News is turning a very nice resort into a working farm. And Joel Salton's, you can take everything from beekeeping to, Joel Salton is teaching a course on slaughtering animals, and he's the keynote speaker. And they're showing the movie, and we're speaking on a panel about these same issues. And so I'm hoping, and I just got asked to speak at Hofstra University School of Law, which is, that's exciting to me, because if I can get the law students involved in this, that's good. So the the law schools, the colleges, the kids can really make a difference, and as we all can. But I'll just quickly tell you that that Cisco executives came to my movie in Boston, and they introduced themselves afterwards to me and said, "We're from Big Bad Cisco." And I said, "You don't have to be from Big Bad Cisco. You could be from Big Good Cisco." And they said that they were actually doing an experiment in Michigan around local foods, and if they could help the colleges and schools and restaurants get, if they could support them getting just the food from local foods, and it was actually working. And who was driving this was the college kids were refusing to eat the industrialized food, and they were demanding local foods. So if we demand it, these companies, the suppliers, these distributors, they will step up. And I don't know if big companies can ever do that great of a job, because their number one priority will always be the bottom line and making money. But however, every little bit helps in this situation that we're in right now. So. Right.
That's great. Well, it's fantastic to hear all the opportunities you're getting, share the message. And it thrills me to see a mom who took her family's health into her hands and then went multiple steps beyond that. So very encouraging and inspiring. Probably not just to me, but to many people out there. So thank you so much for all you're doing, and we look forward to hearing more about what opportunities and events you're at. If you would, make sure you take some pictures of the Mother Earth News event and share those on the Facebook page so we can see that. I'd love to see that. And if you, by the way, if you're ever down in Virginia, I'd love to try to set up a screening, or if you want to come down here, maybe when it gets colder. Follow the fall foliage down. Love to try to set up a screening at maybe at Virginia Tech or one of the local universities here and have you come. So we can talk about that later. But is on the website, is there a place for people putting in requests for screenings for you to come and attend screenings?
Yes, right on the website it says request a screening. It's just a button. And then it goes to a woman named Jessica Rosner who will get back to you.
Great. That's awesome. Okay, great. Well, I think we're out of...
I just got an update that, never mind. I got an update from Alvin, but it doesn't say anything important about the trial. It just says hello. Okay. So well, I thought I'd leave you with an update, but thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for updating us on that, and I know you were posting that on Facebook, so we'll look there. I'll try to keep tabs on that and share those on the True Food Solutions page as we get more news. So again, thanks for all you're doing, and thanks for promoting, especially Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. I'll make sure that all the resources that you mentioned in the slides and verbally are put onto the resource page where the recording will be posted. And we had, I think, a packed house tonight. So if anybody out there knows anybody who registered and couldn't make it in because it was full, or you know anybody that would be interested in it, please share the link to the resource page that has the recording as well as the other resources on it, and tell other people about it. We're hoping to get the word out beyond just the limited number of people who could join us here tonight. And if you have any suggestions for guests to have on future webinars, we'd love to hear them. We already had a lot of guests requested, and we're working on a lot of those. But you never know. There may be ones that you've heard of, people you've read their book or something that haven't kind of been put on our list yet, and that we're working on. So please let us know if you have any recommendations. You can just reply to the follow-up email or any of our emails to let me know, who you would love to see on the webinar in the future. So again, thanks, Chris, so much for coming, and appreciate your time with us tonight and sharing all your great thoughts with us. And you have anything else to say before we wrap up?
I don't. Just thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Kristin. It was great to have you, and look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. Thanks for coming, everyone. Have a good night.